Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexandre Niquado. I'm with my colleague André Dudomen. This is a special episode with Corey Thomas. So, if you could introduce yourself to our audience, please, Corey.
Hi, Welly Sikbu. Good morning. Nin Deluisin Corey Thomas, Nin Delewe Geskabegia, Nin Migma. So, hi, my name is Corey Thomas. I'm from Geskabegia and I am Mi'kmaq First Nations. I am also the composer and bass player for the band Backwater Township.
Corey, you have a show with your trio in a few hours. Some musicians say they always feel nervous before a show, even if they are old timer like you.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a thing for me if I didn't have such a great support. And I'm actually playing with like a group of 5 people this time, so the band has expanded much, much more since the last time I played for Présence Autochtone. So I'm excited, not nervous, more just excited to get out there and play music for the folks like usual.
I know that you have been always very expendable because that we were having always a discussion here. I wanted to put a quartet, a quintet, and they say no, a trio. Yes, but they are 4 on the stage.
Yeah, it's always like that. Well, I guess it's more because Backwater Township itself, the way that I view it is more of just because I don't see, I see more artistry in just the music more so than just the person itself. So I feel like if I call it like the Corey Thomas experience or something, people are going to be like, oh, wow, this guy's like the Jimi Hendrix of jazz, I guess. Which, like, no, that's not what it is at all. And I feel like because my music is a vehicle for improv and doing things with different musicians that I meet along the way, that Backwater Township is just a really good way of just having a nice catchy name to go along with what it is that I do.
Yes, and cello would be a lot more difficult to break up the stage than guitar.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the upright bass definitely gets pretty daunting sometimes. The hardest thing about playing it is getting it to the gig. The songs, not so bad.
I remember the first time I saw you. This is Aidan Thorne who told me I have a friend at Concordia University, and he is playing on the campus. And I went and we were finishing your study at the Department of Music of Concordia University.
Yeah, so that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
off.
Go ahead. I'll continue. For me, that was very special. So that was the Jazz Nations program that I had put together. And that was very special to me because what I had done is that I had researched a lot of different jazz musicians within the realm of like Indigenous jazz musicians that participated in this music. And it was such a great thing because I started seeing how much history that Indigenous people had within the world of jazz music. So, you know, having people from like the very beginning, Congo Square, that area, finding out about different social aspects that came out of this marriage between like Black musicians like in America as well as like First Nations musicians that existed in that area. You have things like the Mardi Gras Indians, which exist now in New Orleans, which pays homage to that connection that Indigenous people and Black people had within America during times of slavery. So it uncovered so much different sociological aspects as well as musical aspects that I just wasn't hip to before that. And that whole journey of discovering that, learning about artists such as Oscar Pettiford, Mildred Bailey, Jim Pepper, Don Chatham, like it's such a treasure trove and wealth of knowledge that we don't know now because unfortunately music has developed in a way to become jazz music specifically became very academic and gatekeepy. And I feel like Indigenous people lost the seat at that table because of sociological circumstances, such as like jazz music becoming commodified more as like an educational music rather than a music of the people, because that's what it's always been.
Yes, and the common story between the Afro-Americans that have been brought here by the slavery and the colonization of the indigenous nations in the same continent has not been very documented, and there was obviously links and in many circumstances, and I have seen the theater play of Émilie Monet about a black slave in Montreal, and she explores exactly this field that. And also in the film Rumble, we see a lot of the influence and almost unknown influence that Indigenous cultures and Indigenous artists have had on American music. And I think you should make a revival of the Nation show.
What do you think I'm trying to do? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. It's yeah, I would love to see a revival. There are other cats who are like, it's becoming more and more like popular again because more Indigenous folks are going to universities now and studying art. So like that's what happens with arts a lot of times. Like the reason why in World War II there was this big explosion afterwards of people who went to go study like music afterwards was because the GI Bill existed, which was after the war. As a veteran, you had a certain status where you were able to go study, and you could study whatever you want. And that's when jazz education started popping up because there was a big demand for a lot of Black musicians wanted to study jazz music. Unfortunately, a lot of Indigenous veterans didn't get those same rights that they should have received. And that's about the start of when that divide happened. I think that now we are seeing that like there are more and more people who are choosing to do post-secondary education as their means to enter the art field, that biosphere that is the art world. And I think we are definitely going to start seeing an uptick of people doing jazz music, classical music, and like really like making it so that we can participate in again, like have that voice, you know, like re-indigenizing. I know we say that as like a buzzword a lot of times, but that is legitimately indigenizing something that we haven't been able to have a voice in, and it's currently happening, which I really think it's you know, it's wonderful. There was this one artist that I was emailing back and forth. Her name is Julia O'Keefe, and she's from New York, and she is a First Nations jazz singer. And the stuff that she does, and like I've seen her like doing Mildred Bailey, and it's beautiful. She also has her own Indigenous big band too, which is amazing to see. I love it. It's a thing now. It's definitely a revival, and I would hope that I can have a impact in it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I think offline we would need this fall to have a conversation, and some projects can be supported by the Montreal First Peoples Festival and take place in the event future editions in Montreal. Anyway, we are a big fan of Backwater Township since the beginning.
Thank you. Wow, I enjoy
and it opens the door for another question. How come a young Big Mao in Gaskapédiac I should say a normal McMahon become an artist and a jazz man.
It's honestly, I definitely didn't start here. You know, when I was a kid, I was like most people who had just like res uncles who like were in Metallica tribute bands and like really were just like slamming beers, listening to heavy metal and trying to pick up chicks with music, which like I thought was really cool when I was a kid. As I got older, I started realizing maybe not my scene. But I owe everything how I started as a musician itself to my uncle, who was he was the one who taught me. His name is Robert Jerome, and he still lives in my community, but he's an amazing musician himself. You know, he plays country, he plays metal, like all that kind of stuff. There definitely isn't jazz in Gescabegia, and I would still say there isn't jazz because anytime I go home, I'm like, hey, check out this new song I wrote, and people are like, this is great. When does the singing start? And I'm like, one day we'll get there where you can listen to my tunes and be like, I get it now. But it's still it's how I came to this point is because I studied classical music in Fredericton, New Brunswick. That's where I did my first bachelor's degree. And when I got out of school, I was like really excited because I would say that like my main thing that I do is that I compose music. Like I write music, and I've always been interested in film, writing for video games, writing for any kind of other projects. I've done like a few documentaries and things like that. And it's always been a wonderful experience. And I feel like there's always music in my head and I want to get it out. So that's why classical was something that I looked at because I was always interested in that. And once I got out, I realized, okay, I have this degree now, but I can't afford an orchestra. So there's 4 years down the drain. And so I was like, okay, jazz music. Jazz is something that I can start doing. And if I get people together, it's like it's a music that you meet people that you just met with and you can start communicating a language. And by the end of it, you're making something beautiful, something amazing that makes you feel proud and makes people dance. So why not? And I started doing that. And then I started realizing, wow, this actually is the music for me. It's music that used to be played in brothels. It's music that, was people of color brought this music to America. It is American music. It is something that has been made in America and has been stewarded in America. And all these great musicians have like fostered it since the beginning. And it's just a mishmash and coming together of different, cultures. Jazz music is a little bit of calypso. It's a little bit of Latin samba. It's a little bit of swing music, which is just displacing the strong beat to a upbeat to try to get people to dance and move. It's trying to take things that you normally wouldn't think that they're supposed to be together and just shoving it all together, which is an amazing poetic example of what different cultures can do whenever they're given the reins to take on their own art and their own culture. So that's why I started really getting into it. And then I tried to, like most people, when you get into something in your First Nations, or you're an Indigenous person of any nation, you start to say, okay, is there representation? Like who else who has been through a similar experience as me that has done this? And one of my teachers was like, learn this tune. It's by a guy named Oscar Pettiford. Also, like, do some research on him, because when you do jazz music, you're not only learning about the music, but you have to learn about the people, because the people are what make the music. And Oscar Pettiford was a Choctaw musician. Like, he's from a First Nations community. And I was surprised to hear that. His mother was Cuban and his dad was Choctaw. So I started looking into him more, and then I started noticing that his nickname would be Smoke Signals, which I thought was hilarious. Like, I think that's a pretty cool name for somebody in the jazz community to have. And then I found out he played with this other guy who is called Big Chief Russell Moore, who is like this trombone player who is this really big native dude. And he used to play with Louis Armstrong. So that's like, Louis Armstrong was literally like the pioneer of like jazz music. So I started realizing, oh, from the very beginning, we had a story in this, and now I'm just obsessed with finding out more about that.
This is like something that we don't learn if we are taught in school. Is it something that you had to found out, or is it taught in school?
It's something that I found out, and because, like Andre first mentioned, he met me at my final project, which was the encapsulation of everything that I had learned while studying at Concordia, which I had an amazing time doing it. If this is a music that you want to get into, and you're First Nations, or you don't have much experience making like a audition tape or anything like that for like a university, like please contact me, like reach out to me any way you can. I will personally communicate with you to help you get into these programs, because I think they are valuable and they do need more Indigenous representation. But yeah, it is something that I had to learn for myself, because it's not something that is talked about a lot. And at the same time, you want to have respect when you're talking about it, because the history is so intertwined. I don't want to overstep and make people think that I understand what the Black experience is like, or that like I am an expert on like Black music, because I'm not. 100% I am not. I haven't lived that experience, and I haven't been part of that experience in any way. What I want to know is more of where Indigenous people lie in this music, as well as respect that it is Indigenous people participating in Black music. So I always want to make sure that I am walking that. It's hard. It's because you as a person who like has experienced like a lot of like prejudicism and like systematic racism and things like that, you want to understand where those like ethical boundaries have to be. And I think a lot of times in academia, because academia for the most part like has been a white man's game, for like lack of a better word, that those ethical boundaries have not been drawn up. And so I think that's something that I think about a lot whenever I'm studying it and whenever I'm working to figure out how to present this type of music and these findings that I have. It's something that I want to further study. It's something I want to further give to the world. You know, one day, hopefully, I could write a big book about like Indigenous people and jazz music. I think that would be amazing. It's definitely something on my bucket list for sure, my near future bucket list, hopefully. And I want to continue to also add to it too, add to that repertoire. I'm still trying to find more Mi'kmaq, specifically Mi'kmaq jazz musicians. You know, a lot of times we think about like Indigenous art. We think about it in a we think about it as like a pan-Indigenous thing where we're like Indigenous people in jazz, but it's like you have different cultures that contribute different things. Like Jim Pepper, he was Muskogee, and he did a lot of his music was like peyote songs mixed with jazz, which is like incredible when you find out about that, because he and his community, they do a lot of like psychedelics, and they do that as like part of like their ritual. And then he did that and then like wrote music with it. If you listen to Wichita Toe, it's just basically that. And that guy was the founder of like jazz rock, which is like pretty cool, like jazz fusion. So yeah, it's also good to see it more like nation to nation, as well as like a whole encompassing of Indigenous people within the music. Sorry, I go on a lot of tangents when I speak.
No, that's good. That's very interesting.
I get very excited about this topic.
Yeah, and you speak about a big book, but maybe, as Alexander suggested, maybe just a smaller book for kids at the school, that they got the sense of the variety of influence in jazz, and within that variety, the different Indigenous nations artists that have brought their own inspiration to the whole corpus of jazz music.
Yeah, that's also a very great idea. I feel like I'm gonna have to pay you if you keep giving me these great ideas. So, one at a time, please.
And yes, and we will try to get grants to make you work on those ideas.
I'm not gonna say no. So
And what we are going to listen in a few hours on on the stage of the Jardin Gamelin.
yeah, so I'll probably be playing a lot of my music from my previous album, which was just titled self-titled Backwater Township. But also recently, I've recorded an album, and it will be releasing in October. I'm not sure the exact date yet. I have a single that's going to be releasing on August 5th, Friday, which is tomorrow. And I will be, it will be a malkat, which a malkat means dance in Mi'kmaq. And it's a song I wrote about my grandfather. And when he would get excited, he was a basket maker in my community of Geskabegia. And he's somebody who's greatly influenced me because he's somebody I see that has perfected, and I shouldn't say perfected because nobody ever perfects an art, but he is somebody that has definitely made great strides to put his life into something that is much greater than just him. Like, to him, his art is, it's so much to give yourself to that. And he, you know, created a community. Everybody in the community loved him. He was somebody that, like, you could go into the house anytime and you would have friends over or family. He loved his family. He built, but with his own bare hands, like the house that I grew up in. So it's called a malt gut because when he'd get excited, when he was having like a good time, he would just say a malt gut over and over again, do like a little jig, which sounds silly, but it was part of his character. It's who he was. And so this was a song that I dedicated to him, and it has this sense of bridal joy and like accomplishment in the melody, which is something that's important to me. And that'll be releasing tomorrow, but I will be playing it in just a few moments on the stage.
Wow.
And
so
as well as other sorry, as well as like other songs from the upcoming album, which I'll be releasing October, I will be playing Testing the Waters with on the stage. So it's a special world premiere sneak peek.
Well, this is a live avant-premiere of a brand new single. We are well. The public will be very privileged to live those special moments, thanks to you and your generosity as an artist.
Oh, stop. I am getting paid, so it's not that generous.
I know how much we pay you. You are very generous.
Okay. I'll remember that next time. No, I'm very much looking forward to this next chapter because, to be honest with you, the first album that I wrote, I was happy about it when I wrote it, and it seemed appropriate for the time because of where I was at. I was still studying. I was still learning about this music. I did the album for $400. I was able to get it done. This amazing studio gave me a great deal. It was Serotonin Studios, which anybody, I would tell them to go there. It's a really great spot. I don't think you will ever get a deal as great as I got. I was able to get it done for about $400. I had a group. We were all like students at the same university, and we just wanted to release some music. So we did it. And but if I go back and listen to it now, I'm like, it doesn't sound like what I was trying to get out. This album that I have coming out, I can guarantee 100% this is exactly what I wanted people to hear. This is exactly what I felt. It's so much more mature sounding. It's much more refined, and it's very much a good marker of where I am at in my music journey, as well as my journey as a musician and composer. So I would advise everybody to please listen to my music, and if they like it, please continue, and it'll only get better from here.
I see that your first album is in 2018. That means that you started at the Plaza Festival when you released your album.
Yeah, so like that was a pretty crazy year because after that, Andre as well as a few other people and I were talking, and you guys managed to squeeze me into something there, and it was an incredible experience. And I'm very grateful. Always will be grateful for everything that you guys do for Indigenous people in the art sphere. But yeah, that was my first year playing as like Backwater Township. It was a lot. It was definitely rock and roll. It was like go time all the time.
And before that, did you have your band, or just you started in 2018?
So it started in 2018. Backwater Township started that year, and then I was doing like a lot of other things before that. Like I said, I come from a community where everybody like listens to country or rock and roll. That's exactly what I was doing. I was always more of a musician for hire, and this was something now I feel like I'm comfortable and I want to keep doing this. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep Backwater Township going for as long as I can, as long as the creator will let me do it. And I feel like he or she is really gonna be on my side for this. So that's great. I'm trying to come to terms with the idea of before I used to try to be as humble of a musician as I can be, which like, yes, I still want to be humble and everything like that. But I feel like now, especially a lot of Indigenous artists and creators have to get to a point where they can feel comfortable saying like, I know what I'm doing and I know what I have to offer is something that's important, not just to me, but like for like just art and art's sake. Like this is something that I feel like Backwater Township is a great group. I feel like what we have to contribute to the social sphere of music is very important. What I have personally contribute is important, and I do know what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep doing it regardless.
Well, I think we can tell you that we know that Backwater Township is a great group, and you don't have to have any hesitation to tell it. And of course, it is important as Indigenous leader that we can be very affirmative upfront, because younger generations are looking at us, and if we want to be role models, we have to be seen and we have to be heard, and we have to stand for ourselves. And thank you for all the good music you produce, and that will come in the next 100 years.
Stop. You're really going to make me blush, man. Wow. So, to piggyback off what you're saying, yeah, I think it is good to be role models for the upcoming youth, because everything is moving so fast now. And not only is there a need for like people to absorb the cultural capital that is Indigenous people, it's kind of like, I like to think of like this era as like the what was it, Expo 67, I think it was it 67? Yeah. So like I like to think of like right now as like the Expo 67 of like Indigenous people in art. So like now everybody's looking at us and we're like stepping out. You know how Montreal stepped out and they were like, this is us world. That's kind of what we're doing now, and we're doing it on a stage that's much bigger than even the Expo 67 was, because now every single thing that we do is worldwide. It's all connected. And how do we get the proper message out there? How do we get a message out there that's loving, that's respectful, that's united, like in how we feel, because obviously we have different ideas of what our indigeneity is, what we have, what our culture is, you know, different experiences. I think about it a lot. What is my experience as an Indigenous person? I grew up in a community, a small fishing community on the coast of Gaspé. I played in the woods as a child. I drummed as a kid at my high school gym, or not high school, my elementary school gymnasium. But then as a adolescent, I moved off reserve, and then I started experiencing life as a Indigenous person, like outside of a community, and now as a full-fledged adult, not a youth anymore, which I actually love getting older. I don't want to be a youth anymore. I'm now experiencing life as like a professional city native, like in the world, like figuring that out as I go, and trying to work on building a community outside of the confines of the Indian Act. So that is also something that I appreciate. And then somebody else's experience, you know, I work and I see people every day who are part of like 60 Scoop, who are part of who have survived Indian Day schools. And those are all things that influence me. It's things that influence them. It's things that influence our cosm, our sphere, our cities, our reserves, our families. It's everybody has an idea of what this all means to them, but there is a cohesiveness where we all have an identity within it. We all want something, and we all don't expect something from our culture, but we all get something from it, which is beautiful, you know.
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned Expo 67, because it was the first and maybe the only, I don't know since, but it was certainly the first expo of this kind that had well, they didn't call it First Nations, but there was Indian pavilion.
Oh, yeah.
Normally, the pavilion are for nations, right? Sovereign nations. So it was very particular, and the two commissioners were Indigenous. This was Max Gros-Louis from Wendake, and what's his name? The other one, Delil, Andrew Delil from Ganawagi, two great Indigenous chiefs, and they were the co-commissioners of the pavilion, and they fought to have a real Indigenous content, and it was for the youth at this time. I know it from my own experience as a teenager, to discover this big pavilion and this voice and this affirmation in the biggest event ever happening in Montreal and in Canada, well, in our own kid point of view. It was really a game changer experience for many of us. So it's interesting that you think at this period now as a similar turning point, historical turning point.
Well, yeah, I think that's amazing. I actually didn't know about that. Thank you for making me hip to that. I love learning about something new all the time. Sorry, my cat is being very needy right now, but I am focused. I think that, yeah, that is something that I would expect that Indigenous people would be involved with that. I'm glad that they were. I don't know if there has ever been anything like that since Expo 67 to that extent, like to that magnitude, which is incredible. But I guess that comes back to this idea. I've once had somebody tell me that there are different types of people in the world. And one thing he told me was that the way that he sees me is more of a path carver, where it's like you have people who will like guide you along the snow, but then you have some people who will like put on the snowshoes, go out and make a path for other people to walk. And it's not that it's better than or worse than somebody who's going to lead or follow, but to me, what you're telling me about the folks who are involved in Expo 67 is that, yeah, they were path carvers. There's somebody who created a path, and it took a few generations, but we're all here and we're following behind them. So I'm sure whether they're still alive or if they're still carving that path within Spirit World, I'm sure they're really excited to see everything that has snowballed since then.
Now, I guess you have to get prepared and take care of your cat. So
Yes.
I think it will, we approach the time to conclude. Do you have last comment, Alexandre?
Oh, sorry, Alex.
No. I don't have any comments at the moment. I feel like Korea might something to say.
Yeah, sorry, that was very rude of me. But I just want to say again, thank you guys for having me. This is always a pleasure. I don't know much people who are going to sit down and listen to me ramble on for a good 40 minutes to an hour and still be awake by the time I'm done. So thank you. I would like to tell anybody who's listening to this to, if they can, please follow Backwater Township, listen to our music. If you could follow me on social medias, that would be great. I could always use the uptick in the numbers like anybody else. And it's just a good way for me to continue playing shows and give better content to people that I can and promote this music more, which I love. Come see our show. Yeah, that's basically it. Listen to the new single, which will be releasing tomorrow, August 5th, titled Amalkat. It'll be all over our social media. So if you follow step 1 and 2, you'll get to step 3.
Alors, Alexandre, qu'est-ce que tu nous dis, toi qui es le maître du jeu?
Ben oui, je pense que just have to come up with one word that I thought when you mentioned that the snowshoes, the path makers. I think I would say that you're a leader in in jazz music for us actually. But if I would translate it in Atikamek, I would say kiniganin, nigan, which means the on the front. And it's also a word for leaders to say that if you're leaders in something, kiniganin nigir.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a high praise to live up to, but I won't let you down, Alexander.
Good. Thank you for being here with us. I'm pretty sure that you have a blast on your show at Jardin Gamelin.
Et Matashi, Liam.
Matsashi, bye.
Thank you.